What's up YouTube? Ryan Panny here. Hope you guys are doing reasonably well. It's been a minute since I shot anything on this channel, but I can't miss this one. Like, this is the whole reason that you listen to new music all year. Because what happens is eventually you get a few too many years behind you and then they all start to sort of blend together. So the best way to go back and sort of parse out what you were really loving in a given year are these lists. Like, these lists are for us more than anybody else. Because in 2050, you're not going to think, oh, 2019 was the year that, Soilwork came out. It's going to be a little bit more, like, muddy than that. Metal was awesome this year, as it always is. But for me, this year was marked by a lot of great records rather than, like, 3 or 4 instant classics. It was that type of year for me, because when I was putting this list together initially, there was, like, a good 30 records that were in the running. And we're pretty close. Like, these 10 that I chose didn't necessarily run away with it. A lot of the obvious critical darlings from this year are conspicuously absent from this list, which I always love, although a few of them definitely made it in. I feel like it's a great mix of bands, different subgenres, different generations, different ages, and most importantly, it really truly is an authentic representation of what 2021 looked like for me for metal, because I just did this on one fucking criteria. What I listen to the most. Just amount of listening. What am I most inclined to go back to? That really should be the only criteria for shit like this. But we get in our heads and make it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. So I had a lot of fun pushing records kind of further up the list that I otherwise maybe a couple years ago would have held back from. But if I listened to it more, it got higher. So yeah, I feel like it's really genuine in that way. And I hope that you guys find a couple records that you may have missed along the way, because this shit comes at us at such warp speed. And because of that, I also hope that maybe this list helps you reconsider something that you may have let kind of slip by you, or you listened to once while you were fucking tweeting, you didn't really hear it. Because that's a good chance here too, to be like, all right, wait a second. That record came out at midnight. I had a fucking opinion on it at 1:30 a.m. and then I never revisited it again. You know what I mean? So when you see a record pop up enough times on other people's lists whose tastes you know are somewhat aligned with yours, you might want to second guess yourself. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoy this list. I hope there's a couple records here that pop out as worth a listen, and if that happens, I've done my job. So Epica is at number 10, their 8th record, Omega. Not really into this band before this record, or frankly, the symphonic power metal genre as a whole, aside from some really obvious catalogs like Nightwish, or I guess Symphony X would count, especially their late 90s stuff. But Omega immediately struck me when I gave it a chance as a really grounded metal record. It was not at all the sort of fairy dust, head in the clouds experience that I expected. Like, the guitars do have some bite to them. Songs like Code of Life and Seal Solomon are great examples of genuine riff-driven metal songs with orchestral elements built around them, rather than vice versa, which would be my running criticism of this style of music. And like Abyss of Time, the killer opener on here, has this super heavy breakdown in the middle of it that really caught me off guard the first time I heard it, and it kind of lured me in to want to hear the rest of the record. And look, to be clear, it's not that I don't love my super cheesy and fantastical power metal, because believe me, I do. It's just that I think that sound functions the best when it exists alongside a healthy counterbalance of more of a traditional metal lineage, where power metal actually comes from, the priests and the maidens. When you have that foundation, ironically, it gives you a lot more leeway to be real maximalist and real overblown, like this album does get into, like Kingdom of Heaven Part 3 and the beautiful ballad Rivers. I think when you have a basic kind of metallic core to build around, it's a lot easier to kind of reach for the stars, so to speak, both melodically and arrangement-wise, and we got some long-ass songs on here. It all works because we do still have some grounded sense of riffs and pummeling drums and all that. So, I mean, I love this record. I'm so glad I gave it a chance. This band's been around for forever, but never really caught my ear the way they did here, so beautiful that it happened. Favorite tracks, Abyss of Time, Kingdom of Heaven Part 3, and Twilight Reverie. Number 9 is At the Gates. Bunch of really cool left turns here on their new record, The Nightmare of Being, which I think is just a fucking fantastic title. Now, I'm actually one of the few people who genuinely loved that rough around the edges sound of 2018's to Drink from the Night Itself. Was it 2018 or 2017? 2018, I think. See, I gotta check my list, because I know it was fucking top 5 for me that year. So I'm one of the few people who like that. It was widely criticized, but I'll throw my hands up. This is absolutely a superior sounding record in every way. I'm not gonna argue that at all. But here's the thing. Sonic improvements are not why At the Gates made this list. I mean, I've shown that I don't really care about that. Why At the Gates made this list is because somehow, over 30 years since their inception, they just made their most experimental record. Like, who the fuck would have seen that coming? I mean, based on the last Carcass record, if we're going to do apples to apples here, it has been demonstrated that it's totally fine for a legacy melodeath band to show up every few years and sort of recreate their classic 90s albums. I mean, you don't have to push the envelope at this point if you're at the gates, but that's exactly what they did here. This record lyrically is their most nuanced and most exploratory album, diving into various bits of philosophy, etc., etc. Musically, I mean, God, we have the saxophone show up. We have some genuine proggy moments. We have some quieter moments that function as more than just interludes, which is definitely a contrast to how At the Gates has used these moments in the past. You think like, you know, Under Serpent Sun as an obvious one, or Cold from their classic record Slaughter of the Soul. The thing is, these new, really brand new elements coexist beautifully alongside the classic At the Gates sound, which is also here. It's embodied by a track like Cult of Salvation, or really even the opener, Spectre of Extinction. These titles they really roll off the tongue. But yeah, huge triumph here for At the Gates. Their best and most fully formed album since the 90s. It's been out almost 6 months and I'm still sort of learning more about why I love it so much. Favorite tracks, Cosmic Pessimism, it's hard to say, Cult of Salvation, and Garden of Cyrus. Jinjer's fourth album, Wallflowers, is up next here. I do have to say, just about this album in particular, as I'm sure you guys can already tell, there are gonna be a lot of blockbuster names on this list. Just bands that everyone and their mother have heard of, bands that are very obvious, and while we may agree or disagree about their inclusion or exclusion, they're already on the hard drive, which is why I'm going to place strong emphasis that you check out this record in particular, because I know it was my first time hearing of them, so 100% of my audience can't be familiar with them either. I would describe their sound overall as like proggy metalcore. Like the most prominent influences to my ear are Converge and Protest the Hero, if that gives you a good idea of the mesh of styles here. Although you do have female clean vocals mixing in with the harsh vocals, which adds in a totally different flavor. But this is a great band for like Code Orange fans who have an extra craving for nerdier and for more time changes. My highest compliment to this record is the riff writing. These by far are the best written riffs on this list. They are equally catchy and complicated, which is something that you might say about like Revocation's best work. It's such a fucking hard balance to strike. Putting together notes that bring a certain element of discord and chaos and rhythmic imbalance, but still register in your brain as agreeable and inviting and even addictive at times. I admire the fuck out of any musician in any genre that can do that. And the album, which, you know, I mean, I compared it to Code Orange, it does maintain a certain hostility and anger and rawness, so it really is the whole package. It's an album that you probably need a little bit of a prog sensibility to fully enjoy, but I recommend you check it out either way. Favorite tracks, gonna wing this. Sleep of the Righteous, so fucking heavy. As I Boil Ice, and Dead Hands Feel No Pain. Iaton is number 7 with Access All Worlds. All my deepest love and admiration for Epica, but this is the most epic and most grandiose music on the list. The whole otherworldly theme, the band, from a sonic perspective, take very seriously. This music really does engulf you, particularly in the jaw-dropping finale, Safe Across the Endless Night. Just larger than life in every way, and that general atmosphere is aided quite a bit by one of the best high-register vocal performances I have heard in metal in the past several years from frontman John Aldara. My goodness. That is pretty much enough to get this record included. What's funny though is, despite that, it's not like I can sell this record as some sort of fantastical power metal odyssey, because it's not that at all. There are elements of black metal here. There's some prog for sure. The harsh vocals take on more of a melodeath flavor. It's a great album for someone who's looking to sort of step out of those comfortable boxes, those subgenre boxes that they put all their favorite bands in, because this record just does not conform. It's the kind of record that you'll listen and will sort of redefine the way you look at metal subgenres. I think fluid is the right way to describe this record. It's very fluid in the styles that it dips in and out of. Favorite tracks, easy. Safe Across the Endless Night, Tower of Cosmic Nihility, and Voyage of the Gargany. 3 of my favorite metal songs of the year. And now here is an album that, contrary to the last one, will not expand your sense of anything, but I would not fucking have it any other way, and that is Fear Factory's Aggression Continuum. I cannot believe how fucking good this record is. I'm so sad that frontman Burton C. Bell's out of the band now, but my god did he go out with a bang. Fear Factory made, like, arguably a better full body of work here than their classic albums like Demanufactured and Obsolete. I really think that. And if you're somebody who never really got Fear Factory, which is something that I run across quite a bit, I would say, like, go ahead, cherry pick 4 or 5 songs from those 2 records, which are classics, absolutely. But then just listen to Aggression Continuum all the way through, because it is such a perfect representation of what makes this band special. I mean, those grinding robotic kick drums that Fear Factory did so much to help pioneer in the early 90s, those bellowing, groovy, real bottom-end heavy riffs they're like nu metal on crack, the cold, detached, dystopian, clean vocals, along with some industrial flourishes here and there, and some more Neanderthal rage-fueled lyrics to kind of counterbalance the more futuristic themes. I mean, it's such a wonderful combination of elements, and I don't think I've ever loved Fear Factory as much as I did on this record. They really, 30 years in, hit a career high here. Favorite tracks, I really do love all of them. Manufactured Hope, what a killer beginning to that song. Fuel Injected Suicide Machine, which is just the best title ever. And Collapse. Okay, top 5. The Spiritbox record. I loved it alongside many other metal enthusiasts, I'm sure. I did not buy into the hype on these guys when they were an EP band, but now this record just totally won me over in a big way. I could aim a lot of specific praise at like Courtney LaPlante's soulful vocals or Dan Bronstein's rich production, but in general, the highest compliment that I can give this record is that it's proof that metal can sound warm and inviting and sublime without losing its luster. Highlights on here like Secret Garden and Summit and We Live in a Strange World and the title track, they feel like a snug blanket to me. So the band succeeds not only by capturing that feeling, but also just by being completely uncategorizable. Don't know if that's a word, don't care. But it's just true. It's impossible to categorize this record. I do think there is an underlying pathos of second wave of metalcore, but considering how much I strongly dislike albums of that ilk and how much I love this record, obviously they've done a lot to create some distance there. To be honest, I don't empathize with the position Spiritbox are in right now, because the metal community, rightfully or not rightfully so, really has kind of ordained them the future of metal. And that's a lot of pressure, I think. But I'm just curious to see how they follow it up. And I'm just so happy that I gave him another chance. Favorite tracks, I mean, I could go on all day. Secret Garden, Summit, We Live in a Strange World is a really cool one. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. Number 4, near and dear to my beating heart, Trivium in the Court of the Dragon. Definitely have the strongest emotional connection to this one. I don't know if I've ever been more proud of a band. Like pride is a weird emotion with bands because you're not their fucking dad, you're not their A&R, but just in so many ways I've grown up with these guys, having listened to them since middle school, and I think it is absolutely amazing for your 10th album to be your most widely acclaimed and be like an instant top 3 in the catalog, pretty much agreed upon by all fans of the band. That's a remarkable achievement. Think of all your favorite bands. How many of them at number 10 did they put out something this good? I mean, Metallica, if we're going to use a really obvious comparison, if we call Load and Reload one album, they haven't even made their 10th album yet. So I'm just like beaming with pride every time I think about this record, and that has definitely influenced it climbing up the list higher and higher. I originally had it at like 10, because there is one song on here, Dawn to Decadence, that I'm not crazy about, but just my overall feeling about this record is just so strong. And in particular with me, I'm even more dumbfounded than other people probably are, because I'm one of the few people who's willing to admit that last year, just last year, they put out their worst record. For some reason, I'm the only one who thought it was bad, but I thought it was the worst Trivium record by a pretty significant margin. And so I'm like equally confused by that, because the same group of people 18 months later put this out. That's crazy to me. But yeah, Alex Bent, their drummer, is now my favorite drummer in metal after these last few records. He is just unbelievable, and his techie sensibilities work so well with Trivium's almost at times pop metal approach. Paulo Gregolatto's bass playing is actually very intricate and very prominent in parts of this album. I really should have reviewed this because I have so much to say about it. Crisis of Revelation is an example that comes to mind of something that just like effortlessly recaptures the ascendancy days of the band. Little In Waves is thrown in there. It's just an unbelievable achievement for this band in particular. I'm not going to say it's like some metal landmark, but if we look at the context of Trivium's career, album number 10 being this good, and in particular the title track being like their biggest song ever, or most loved song ever, it's just incredible. So I'm really happy for Trivium. and a lot of things they're doing both on social media and with the airplane hangar they bought. It's all very cool. So really support these guys. Love seeing them on the metal tour of the year. Favorite songs in here, I'll go easy. Court of the Dragon, Christ of Revelation, great deep cut, and Democles. Okay, number 3, I'm giving to Tribulation. Absolutely love this band out of Sweden and their unique style. For me personally, Where the Gloom Becomes Sound really does build on 2018's already excellent Down Below. I just think that this is a much more full and well-rounded track list. It just leaves absolutely nothing to be desired, from the black and roll elements of songs like Funeral Pyre and the great single Hour of the Wolf, to that real heavy doom metal influence that kind of pounds at you on Inanna and on Dirge of a Dying Soul. Then you have black metal creeping in on the closer there, Wilderness. Just at the end of it, it's such a full and complete listen. You just feel like, again, there's just nothing to be desired. You had your meal, you had your appetizer, your main course, and your dessert, and there's just nothing like, oh, I wish they would have incorporated that a little more, or there's really nothing you would change about it. And I love that feeling when I'm listening to records. This is the kind of band that really any type of metal fan could get into, even old school metal fans, because a lot of these songs feel like 80s influenced kind of traditional metal songs, just with a little bit of an extreme metal vocal over it. So I recommend this band to, there's a lot of different metal fans that I recommend them to. Favorite tracks, definitely Funeral Pyre at number 1. Inanna, Wilderness, that's a good trio. Number 2, I really loved this Ghost of Atlantis record, 3624. I believe I've described them before as like Scar Symmetry if they were symphonic and less technical, which, coming from a massive Scar Symmetry fan, is about as high as praise gets from me. But I mean, really probably what I was getting at is the balance between traditional death metal and mellow death with just these epic, soaring, really unapologetically melodic choruses. That balance is struck impeccably. I'm absolutely addicted to the symphonic flair here. I think it adds so much to the songs, and it really does scratch that itch for me musically. And most importantly, not a single bad track, not a single dull moment. It's such a tight 40 minutes. And that's kind of a theme as we get up this list. Like Tribulation, same thing. For an album to be one of your top albums, it doesn't have to be mind-blowing or game-changing, or it doesn't have to like completely rearrange your notions of what metal can and can't be, but what it does have to be is fucking smooth from beginning to end, and that's what this record really is. Favorite tracks, the closer, Lost Compass, it really grows on you after a while. Tridents Fail and Curse of Man. And number 1, staying steady for my mid-year list, is Mare Cognitum with Solar Paroxysm. One-man American black metal at its finest. It's not necessarily a runaway pick for me, like way beyond these other records, but it's the record that came out this year that I listened to the most. So there it is. It's the kind of music where either you're gonna like it or you're not. This style of music is not necessarily complicated to wrap your head around, but it is very complicated and very challenging to execute and to keep interesting. Jacob Buzarski, whose brainchild this is, has such a natural gift for compositional timing. You know, the best black metal is notoriously formless and meandering, but it takes a special level of skill and perception to just know and have an instinct for when to evolve the song, when to push a passage into another one, because there's not really any rules. As we know in regular society, when there are no rules, things get the most complicated and most difficult, and I think the ability to strike that balance, I know I use the term balance a lot, but it's just true. The balance between creating kind of these long-winded and hypnotic and meditative soundscapes that sort of are escapist, with keeping a song interesting and keeping things moving, that's a really fucking difficult thing to do. And I really admire his ability to do so. This is an hour-long masterclass in exactly that. A lot of times with these lists, I think more often than not, my number 1 pick ends up being the type of album that I can sort of universally recommend. Like Soilwork in 2019 is the perfect example. Who the fuck who listens to metal shouldn't listen to that record? You know what I mean? It's just obvious. But Mare Cognitum, it doesn't have to be for all of you. It doesn't. It's a very specific style that is just, in my opinion, done incredibly well. But if you do give it a solid hour of your time, you will absolutely be rewarded, and you will, at the very least, gain appreciation for what a flawlessly executed black metal album should sound like. And bam, there it is. there's a list. I hope you guys have an awesome new year. I had to get the metal list out. The non-metal one I can do in a few days, but I really wanted to get this one out while it was still 2021. Metal, it continues to thrive, and since this music has such a lengthy staying power with its fans, like there ends up being like 4 or 5 generations coexisting at once, all making great contributions to this art form that we all love so much. So I'm, as I have been for years now, very optimistic about where metal is, very grateful to everybody who strapped on a guitar or tuned a drum set and went to the studio to fucking melt our faces. We greatly appreciate it. To all of you, even people who made bad records, I'm still appreciative to your contributions to this amazing genre, which just shows no sign of slowing down fucking 50 years in now. As always, thank you so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video and are not yet subscribed to my channel, please consider doing so by clicking right over here, as well as checking out any other rock or metal related content that I publish here on a regular basis. I really appreciate you guys watching, liking, disliking, just engaging in any fashion. Twitter, Instagram handle is @RyanPannyMusic. Again, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you soon.